So, you started out your career as a performer, a singer. You still are an extraordinarily present and vibrant performer. I've seen you live and in person on a stage, and I know that it's something that you love to do. Can you talk about how, in your beginnings, you set about building your own brand as a performer?
It was really scary in the first instance, actually, because I'd been a performer since I was sort of 14, 15 years old. When I was 16, I essentially ran away with the circus. So I was a singer and performer all over the world, working for different holiday centres, cruise liners, so on and so forth. But none of that was really about having a personal brand. I was working for an entertainment company. I was representing the entertainment company. When I came back to the UK, I worked in corporate and worked for some phenomenal brands who I became intrinsically a part of. So here in the UK, the Carphone Warehouse, when the Carphone Warehouse was on the rise, Jaguar Land Rover, for example. So really, really big brands. And I got to learn on the inside because I was in the HR facility and I was like working very closely with the marketing team and the learning and development team that I was a part of. I got to learn what big brands do in order to be recognizable, in order to sort of have a lifeblood, in order to have a culture, and how that culture then spills out into things like client attraction, audience attraction, and so on and so forth. And I came out of corporate because I realized that actually I was completely unemployable from an intrinsic point of view. And we'll talk about this over the course of the conversation. But when I came out to come and work for myself, working for myself meant coming back into performance. And I sought assistance at the time from the local council here and the local university. They did small business incubators. And I was paired with a mentor at the time, a guy called Neil Simpson. And I adore him. And we remain friends to this day. And this is, sort of almost like 12 years ago now. And one thing that he said to me right in the beginning is be instantly recognizable. And that doesn't necessarily mean have a uniform, but he was kind of saying like, look, stand out. So for me, the branding for me as a singer, I had to connect to the sound that I had, the songs that I wanted to sing, the audiences that I wanted to sing for. And at the time, thematically, I was sort of working and singing sort of jazz vintage, sort of 50s, 40s, 50s kind of vibe. And eventually that grew into sort of soul and Motown and jazz and a bit of a mishmash. But right at the very beginning, being instantly recognizable for me was having victory rolls in. And I had the two sides of my hair dyed red. So it's like kind of red and black striped hair. And I would wear these vintage 50s dresses. And at the time, what that allowed me to do is walk into places and be instantly recognizable. So it was one of the ways, very early doors, that I was able to sort of walk into a room and people kind of know who I was. And I sort of generated that very, very quickly, very early doors in my business. And that is sort of transcended now into IATQB, where I walk into most rooms and people will instantly either recognize me or I'll stand out. So I'm not really necessarily a wallflower in the things that I wear. I wear headscarves. I'm really heavily tattooed. I always have red nails. So there are lots of things that I do to be instantly recognizable. And that was the first piece of work that I did when I moved out into working for myself. Then it was building on the layers of, what do I stand for? As a performer, now as a singer, as a coach, as a mentor. And all of that work came after, but actually that's when things started to really get interesting. So yeah, being instantly recognizable was one of the things that I did in the first instance. And the second thing that I did was I would go live, and live streams was kind of birth of Facebook Live, and talk about what I was getting up to and what I cared about a lot. If I'm gigging a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I'd be putting my makeup on, sharing with people what I was getting up to, what was happening in my life, the scrapes that I was getting into, the things that I was planning. So people got to really understand what made me tick, and then decided to either, gravitate and magnetize towards that or not, for a lot of people, which is equally okay.
And essential for a brand to thrive, right? For it to attract and distance the people who are for it or not for it. So you mentioned IATQB. So for anyone who's listening who is not in the know about IATQB, I will have mentioned it in the intro already, but I would love you to talk about how you have made that transition, and specifically when it comes to the brand, because you established your brand of performance, of
Yeah.
singing, of emceeing that you've been doing in companies and for events all over the place.
Yeah.
But you then created I Am the Queen Bee and the offerings that you have, the coaching offerings that you have, specifically to help people take up space and make their
Yes.
voices heard and be bigger in the world, to offer greater support to other people, to grow their businesses, to grow their confidence. And that's how you and I intersected, because I had seen some of my clients work with you and I thought, hang on, I've always wanted to be on stages. No, I don't make a secret out of that. And I still want to be on massive stages.
And you're incredible when you get on those stages as well.
It's so much fun. And so the first big stage that I have been on was your stage, your live event, off the back of a program that I did. And I'm interested in knowing how you took that experience of both learning in the corporate space, what big brands were doing to differentiate themselves and to stand out, what you learned in your cells as a performer with your beautiful victory rolls. And I mean, I will link to your website and I will link to your socials. And as you're listening, Dani is a feast for the eyes as much as for the ears and the heart. You're going to learn really quickly. And the heart, one of my favorite people I have ever met in online business. Truly, I feel like I'm sharing one of my favorite secrets in sharing this conversation with you as you listen to us. So, but what you learned in your cells about differentiating yourself, how did you then take those two pieces, both the corporate part and the performance part, and apply them to growing this business? Because you said you started working for yourself 12 years ago. I would have guessed that it was longer ago than that, because of just how fast it seems from the outside that you've grown, and just how much you're accomplishing and you keep accomplishing while mumming 3 kids and dogs and life and all the things. How did you bring those things and start to layer on with I Am the Queen Bee and what you offer there?
So for me, coming out of corporate was more to do with me not wanting to work for anybody, or actually me struggling to work for other people. So very, very briefly, so my backstory is that as I was growing up, I experienced things like domestic abuse in the family home. That played out into my personal life as I grew older. 13 years ago, as a result of that, I ended up homeless with my 2 kids under the age of 3. And I just really thought there's got to be more than this. So I came out of entertainment in my early 20s because it wasn't deemed a proper job. And then I went to go and work within the corporate sector to get the steady income, to have the career progression opportunities, so on and so forth. And because of everything that was happening underneath, I felt like there was more, but I didn't know how to access more. So the only thing that I could focus on is, what am I really good at and what brings me joy? How do I monetize that? And that was the first thing that I had to decide. And for me, that was always singing. It was always performance. Mm-hmm. So me and my sister made a vow when we were about 13 years old. There was a lot of things happening downstairs in terms of in the family house, between my parents, between cousins, aunties, uncles, grandmas, granddads. It was very chaotic. And we was up in the we was in the bedroom with the volume turned up because there was a lot of arguing happening downstairs. And that's just how we just turned the noise up so we didn't have to hear the noise downstairs. And I remember saying to my sister, if ever we're in a position to help other people, that's what I want to do. And I don't know how I'm going to do it. I want to be an entertainer for sure, but I want to help other people. And we kind of made a bit of a pact. I'm telling you this for a reason, because that was the seed that was sown for the majority of work that I do now. And this is the year that I turned 40. And between then and now is sort of a series, I guess, a comedy of errors. Comedy of errors, trials, tribulations, and incredible successes and wins as well, that have brought me to where it is that I am now, in that a lot of those formative decisions that I was making have been able to come to fruition. So we have IATQB. And that stands for I am the Queen Bee. And the reason why I refer to it as I am IATQB is that we are moving from personal brand to a larger and scalable situation. And we are an inclusive business, and one of our linchpins, one of our, key values is that we are actively inclusive. And for me to be kind of bandying around the phrase I am the Queen Bee may single out people who might not necessarily identify with being female, or they may be male, they may be non-binary, they may be trans. And IATQB actually is more of an umbrella term. But IATQB was, or the phrase I am the Queen Bee, was a reclamation statement, really, that I started to share quite early on in my performance journey. I would refer to the audience that I was sharing these lives with, these live streams with, as Queen Bees. It was predominantly female audience. I was putting my makeup on. People would stop along and watch. They'd just refer to them as the Queen Bees. Actually, when I say the words I am the Queen Bee, or refer to myself as the Queen Bee Dani, it's actually a reclamation statement that I wasn't necessarily born into wealth, or, healthy relationships, or all sorts of things like that. And so I wanted to have a phrase or a strap line, because that's something that I'd learned within the corporate industry, having strap lines, being instantly recognizable, for example, having phrases that audiences and customers can refer back to. It's like having a slogan, right? Mm-hmm. So the phrase I am the Queen Bee, or now in the case of many of my audience, the King Bee, or the Royal Bee, the Sovereign Bee, as well as the Queen Bee. Allows people to be identifiable with my brand. And that was something that I'd learned, that having a mission statement, having something, if you think, I don't know, Cadbury's Flake, if you back in the 80s and 90s, only the crumbliest, flakiest chocolate tasted like chocolate never tasted before, right? Is an example. The Milky Bar, like the Milky Bar Kid, there's all sorts of sort of strap lines and things. And when you have a statement, or even a series of statements that I have within my business, you become, it becomes easy to relate back. So one of the things that I actively did was think, when I'm setting up a business, okay, I want to be a singer, but that isn't fulfilling me, because I know I have this huge, incredible skill set from working in the HR, L&D facilities within some fantastic corporate companies. How do I then flesh that out to take what I know from performance and then utilize that within business to help other people? What can I do to provide more value, instead of me just turning up and singing and telling people about the scrapes that I get into? How do I make this a brand? I want to help people. So in the first instance, that became quite broad. So I would help people broadly with small business. There wasn't a lot of sort of free facilities for small businesses to kind of come together in safety, without being judged, without having to part with a lot of money, so on and so forth. And that's where IATQB was born. It was a community, a movement, a network. And then it was, okay, so how do we monetize this? How do we create a product suite that sits along this feeling? So actually, IATQB started out as a feeling. It started out as within a value set of kindness being a superpower, that, sharing our successes and our challenges in safety. The premise that we all do well when we all do well, and creating a safe environment for us to have those conversations, even if it was just in the first instance via live streams. That was where the seed of IATQB began. And then as it grew, as I saw, actually, whoa, this is a moving, living, breathing thing. This is a company now. We're putting on events. I'm teaching people, so that the commodities that sit now within the business speak specifically to those products. So speaking is my superpower. Being able to perform is one of my superpowers. I'm also really great at teaching those disciplines, not singing specifically. I'm not a singing coach, but speaking, presentation, taking up space, understanding messaging, so on and so forth, are my superpowers. So that became the sort of the commodity and the product suite that sat within that consideration of I am the Queen Bee, King Bee, Royal Bee, Sovereign Bee. And that's how it kind of built from there. So that understanding that we need some lifeblood. So we need to understand, what is the core value of this community? What is the core value of this? And then commoditizing on top of that really meant that it was easy, once I'd nailed that bit, to sell products. I didn't realize that in all the years that I was live streaming and selling my singing gigs, that that's actually what I was doing. I was building community, building audience, so that when I created a product suite that spoke to an audience that I wanted to sell to outside of entertainment, it became, in inverted commas, easy. I say easy. I'd spent 8 years prior building this audience, not knowing that that's what I was doing, but sharing my values, sharing my values, so that when it was time to light the blue touch paper of the business, so to speak, it felt like a very, very quick trajectory. Actually, it wasn't. It was 20 years experience in corporate. It was 20 years experience on the inside of some big businesses, understanding how they market, understanding how they connect, and then thinking, what if I was to apply this to me? What if I was to apply this as a small business? What if I was branded? What if I turned up already looking, feeling, and behaving like a celebrity? Maybe everyone then will just think that that's the case. Turns out it is. So I started this whisper campaign, Anne. I'd walk into rooms and I'd say, don't tell anyone, but I'm famous. And if you tell people, they're going to want selfies and stuff. So we're just going to keep it on the down low. People have to sign NDAs when they work with me and stuff. Like, we can't go around telling people that we're famous. And they go, yeah, no worries, I won't tell anyone. And then they just go, do you know she's famous? So we just had loads of fun with this concept of celebrity, faux celebrity, mixed with this sort of intrinsic marketing and business knowledge, mixed with this inherent and unshakable value set of kindness being a superpower. We all do well when we all do well. We find the fun. We bring the joy. We do things with integrity. We are actively inclusive. We fail forward. All of these things are our values. We eat, live and breathe them as a team. So when we started to expand, the team expanded. When we started to sell things, people started to buy them. It's because they really believed in us.
Yeah. And it's something that is noticeable, remarkable, makes you stand out because you and I connected a few years back, and seeing you do those lives and, putting on your incredible makeup that you do. For those people who have never seen Dani, I urge you to check out the photo that's with this episode, but also link maybe to our YouTube production, dissemination. The word is not coming to me. We're going to be sharing this on YouTube. The podcast is on YouTube. And check out the socials as well, because it's just glorious to see you. You're stunning every minute that I've ever seen you. Oh. But to take, and I've just lost my train of thought because ADHD, but to take all of that standing out and to apply it, that knowledge, that performance ability, that charisma that you have, and to then be able to grow a team and to lend your courage and lend your confidence to other people is really beautiful. And in the Be Inspired and Be Heard cohorts that I was in, these are 2 programs that you have, that I went into because I wanted some structure around what I think is a fairly natural ability that I have to speak. Yes. I love doing my podcast. I love speaking in front of a room full of people. The bigger, the better my ego feels. But actually, I just get a lot of joy out of interacting and moving an audience, if that's something that's available. And to see how you are able not only to infuse your team with the values that you just went through, which are beautiful. They're not single word values. They're, we fail forward, we find the fun, we bring joy. When we all succeed, we all succeed. It's beautiful to see that your team lives those values and feels valuable because they all buy into this movement. It's like any kind of a social movement, a cause. Lifting other people up has become your cause, be it through the work that you do in helping people speak up and take up space and be more confident, or in helping people with the foundation that you have. And that piece around the confidence and the courage, I think, is really, really critical. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because I've been doing a lot of work. I think when you're building a business, what you do in the first instance, first five years really, is you do a lot of the sort of the intellectual work. You do that. Okay, so what do I have to do logically in order to build a business? And I think you get so far and then you realize that actually some of the stuff has become internal. They become more connective and spiritual and less logical and more mindset related. And as business owners, I find that, we go on this journey and a lot of us hit glass ceilings along the way. And I've been doing a lot of reflection on the connection that I have with the business, not because I feel disconnected from it. I feel inherently connected to it, and understanding that sometimes some of that is rooted in a bit of a trauma response for me, that if people are laughing at me, if I'm being funny, you know, I don't tell people that I'm a comedian when I'm on stage or when I'm sort of sharing my work, because then people expect me to be funny. But actually one of my MOs is that I'm relatively funny when I'm on stage. And but if people are laughing and the attention is on me, then everybody's safe. So if I think about where my entertainment bones come from, actually it was a bit of a trauma response early doors. But what I've been able to do is sort of reconcile myself with that, and then think, okay, so what are all these skills that I've got within this space, having been a survivor of a lot of things, and what are they? And what I find is that people have experienced adversity more often have these like transferable skills, resilience, tenacity. You know, they're quite flexible. They move with the moment. Yes, there are dark times, but the pendulum swings also the other way when we've experienced some of these things. And for me to find the light in people is the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning. And not just for me to find the light in people, because I inherently see it. Again, one of my superpowers, but for them to see it, to help them understand that often, especially when we have fears around visibility, fears around speaking, glossophobia, number one fear in the Western world. You know, not everyone is like you and I, Anne, in that, you know, we enjoy it. Lots of people really don't enjoy it, or they don't think that they've got something valuable to say. The reason why I do what I do is because I can see the value in people taking up space. In fact, the more different the person, the more important it is for them to take up space. Like, I really, really want to provide a platform for people from different backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, racial backgrounds, persuasion, gender backgrounds, so on and so forth. Whether they're disabled or not, but for as many different people to see themselves on my stage, so that they can see themselves on my stage, so that they can see themselves on other stages. Like, it's been really important as we've been building this to think, okay, there is a bigger and wider impact to taking up space. How do we amplify that and amplify that and amplify that so that more people can see themselves? You know, we are entering into a paradigm shift right now, where it's not cutting it just having, for want of a better phrase, the stale pale males owning the space, owning all of the spaces. How do we provide more richness and more color? And we have to do that by sharing our stories. We have to do that by, you know, articulating. So, you know, me creating this and utilizing performance and utilizing business acumen and utilizing what I know about events to spread that has become the bigger work, has become the real reason why I get out of bed in the morning. And there's this quote, right? You've heard me say I share this quite often. It's of course, it's bee related, but aerodynamically, bees shouldn't be able to fly. Their little wings shouldn't get their fat little bodies off the ground, and the bees don't care what humans think is impossible. The bee flies anyway. So utilizing this concept of everyone's overcome something, everyone has a barrier to something. Here is a safe space for you to understand and navigate those barriers whilst I'm doing that work too. So I'm like, we're all linking arms. We're all kind of doing this work together. And everyone who's in this particular field, or, you know, in industry or in business or in business ownership, needs to understand that the logic of what you do can only take you so far. And we've got to understand the head and the heart bit as well. And that's an equal part of the work. It's actually the bit that's probably going to hold you back the most is yourself. So we've found that within the brand and within, you know, the way that I speak and what I speak about and how I speak and how I teach speaking, we really kind of dig down and really hold on to that as part of our core value set. I don't even know if I've answered your question. I went on my little ranty pants then.
It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And I'm just going to make a pause for production purposes because I just realized that I didn't plug my computer in. So I'm going to plug my computer in before this all shuts down. 1 second, because it's plugged in the computer, but not into the actual mains. Good, huh?
Edit that bit out.
What is extra fun is that I just realized that one of the tines of the plug is twisted. So I was like, I will be able to bend this back into shape this instant.
Fine. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. It's plugged in now. It's fine. Because I was like, that's weird. It doesn't seem to be charging.
Are we good?
Yes, no, we're good. Okay.
Amazing.
So for the production team, thank you very much for just removing this section of the conversation. I would love to know, as you're building the brand around the work that you do, but not only around you, how have you mindfully and consciously been able to, and if so, how have you been able to mindfully and consciously impart the voice and the tone and the language and that feeling, that IATQB feeling, to the rest of your team? Because as you run events, and I was at the last, I think, of your events that wasn't at Old Trafford. So if you know Manchester at all, Dani's events are now at Old Trafford. They're that big and getting bigger by the second. They sell out. The next event sells out at the previous. It's wild. It's amazing.
It's a lot. It is wild.
It's amazing. And the event that I was at, where there were, I think, 120 people or so in the room, mm-hmm. and about 20 speakers, guests, VIP, like high profile speakers came in as well. That was a lot for the team to run. And now the events that you're running are exponentially more complex and therefore require exponentially more people. Mm-hmm. And how have you gone about, if you have, mindfully imparting the voice of your brand? Because this is something I say all the time to my clients, your brand's voice comes through you, but it's not all of you. Like, you don't bring all of yourself into the brand, and we don't get your parenting, and we don't get your, whatever. We don't all get one of your tattoos when we buy a program from you, which is a shame because they're really awesome.
Some people do now, which is really strange.
That's their own personal choice.
Show me, like, I have a little logo, a little B logo, and I have people say, "Oh, we've got, like, it really means, like, the community means so much, or the logo means so much, or the concept of IATQB and flying anyway means so much that I wanted to get a tattoo." And obviously, like, I'm super heavily tattooed, like from my neck to my toes. So I think I just should attract that kind of person.
People who are open to the ink,
right?
But how did you? And do you continue? Because I imagine the team must be growing a lot, both in the business piece, and also we'll come in a moment to talk about the foundation part. How do you infuse the language and the voice into the team to ensure that the experience, the feeling that your audience gets on the day and in every moment leading up to it is consistent with one that you would deliver if you were doing it yourself?
So when I recruit, I prefer, no, I'm not always able to do this, I prefer to recruit from within the community or with people who already understand what the community is all about. So they've already had exposure. So I would expect anybody that's coming into and that's not always helpful depending on what it is that you're doing. Having someone that's kind of on the inside isn't always helpful depending on the work that you're doing, like change management, for example. But so in the first instance, there was this, I like to recruit from within the community, within people who, are looking at what it is that we're doing and saying, hey, do you know what? I really want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of the kind of family and the team. When we're growing our events, when we run these events, have what we call Flight Squad. And our Flight Squad are community evangelists. So we have a squad of people who are mental health care professionals, events professionals, inclusion professionals who they've already attended Be Inspired. So they've already attended an event. They know what the event's all about. They're already evangelists for what it is that we are, because we're very, very vocal. I am very, very vocal about what it is that we are about. And then they want to be involved. They want to assist. They want to spread the word. So we create evangelists by having and being very vocal about what our core values are. And we have them documented. And like the team and I have done a very specific set of work centered around purpose, mission, and values that we make every single decision as a business based on. So all the things that I was sharing with you before, and I'm looking at a note here, and the reason I'm looking at a note is because they're written down. Like, we have them and the team have them. And when somebody comes into the team, we share them so that everybody is complicit. Everybody's consenting. Everybody knows who we are as a brand, who we are as a business when they come in. And that way they get to make a decision for or against whether they're here. Like, we are a queer and trans friendly space. If that is something you are uncomfortable with and don't want to do any learning about, this isn't the space for you.
Yeah.
Safety is important. We are actively inclusive for as many different types of people as we are able to welcome in. If that's not something that you're open to, probably not the right space for you. We're a little bit sweary. If that's not your thing, then I'm really sorry. This might not be the place for you. We're adults. We cuss a little bit. That isn't for everyone. Totally cool. We are joyful in the way that we approach life. We are connected and spiritual in some of the things that we do. And we share that. I share that as part of my content. So people can really see and be very visible. All you need to do is go and check on my Instagram to go and see what it is I'm about. And then people can make decisions about whether they get involved. And that's a very active decision on the way that I communicate in what I call our outward motion. So our outward motion is anything that we do in terms of pushing forward message, whether that's through our email list, whether that's through our social media, whether that's through the speaking that I do, so on and so forth. It's making sure that we are so conversant with our value set that it is unwavering, so that anybody that comes in too is unwavering because they've made a decision based along that value set. So the purpose of IATQB is that we help people take up space to make positive change. So I welcome people toward me who want to make positive change within the world. If we think about you and your experience with Be Inspired, and you was talking about neurodivergence, you was talking about the way that education is tackled within the schools and how shocking that is, how shockingly bad it is, in lots of respects. That's a real opportunity to make positive change within different spaces. People come and talk about how to make more sales, how to make more money, how to market, but they all talk about it from a place of making positive and active change within our wider business community. If we look at our values, again, it's a list of things. It's almost like a tick box. Do you you can agree to these or not? If you don't, it's probably not the right space for you. Is kindness a superpower for you? Do you consider it a weakness? If you're one of those cutthroat kind of people within the business space, probably not the right spot for you.
No.
We all do well when we all do well. Do you think that you should be climbing over people in order to get to where it is that you're going? If you think that, not the right spot for you. It is the right spot if you're with us on it. We find the fun and bring the joy. Do you want to have a laugh when you're at work? Yes, good. Us too.
It'll be raucous and it'll be awesome.
We'll have an absolute scream, and we will get stuff done. Because one of the other things is that we deliver what we promise. We tell people what it is that we're going to do, and we make sure that we deliver on it. One of the mantras and one of the things that we come back for on our team all the time is that we are good people doing good things. I genuinely believe that the majority of people are doing things with good intent. If you're a good person doing good things, there's a space for you. Safe spaces to have conversations that matter, and failing forward is the other integral thing. So when we don't understand something, this comes back to the inclusion piece and the diversity piece as well. If we don't understand something, IATQB is a space where you can come and ask questions, and there are people that understand that we are an educational space. So there are willing people and also paid members of our team who are able to educate and provide healthy, non-judgmental discussions. So allowing permission to get things wrong in order to get things right so that we can move the needle on inclusion is really, really important. So we talk about it consistently, insistently, not just consistently. We are insistent on it. And when we're insistent, it becomes obvious to those people that come across us that, this is something that we don't deviate from. We absolutely know where the sat nav is set. We absolutely know where we're driving towards. And then either employees get to make the decision about working with us, or our volunteers make the decision, or indeed our clients and our wider community and audience.
Yeah. And you have taken that piece of, we are good people doing good things to a whole new level in the last year with the Fly Anyway Foundation. Can you talk a little bit about, you've spoken about your own experience and that pact that you made with your sister upstairs when you were 13 through the blaring music to drown out what was going on in the rest of the house, that you wanted to help other people. And I see you doing that every day through the work that you do with the clients who are fortunate enough to be able to work with you, because the programs sell out like wildfire, and obviously you need the resources to be able to join, even though it's very affordable, especially for what what you offer. But what talk a little bit about the Fly Anyway Foundation that you have set up, and how you and your sister are building something that's important.
Yeah. Thank you for asking, because it means the world for me to be able to talk about it. I love IATQB, and there were things that needed to happen for me and for my family in order for me to be able to do my legacy work. And I consider the Fly Anyway Foundation to be my legacy work. So I get to, within my speaking training, and within my events and all of that side of things, and the fun aspect of my social media, I get to help people take up space. In the first instance, I wanted to help everybody. And I also knew that the people that I wanted to help, I wasn't able to help because I wasn't in a financial position to be able to assist those people. Like, access to entry in terms of business coaching, speaking coaching, and so on and so forth is very difficult for a lot of people that are just starting out. But when I was just starting out, I just wanted to help everybody. And what I realized is that I needed to build a business that provided safety, security, stability, and indeed success for myself and my family before I could go on and do the big piece of work, which is a huge piece of work, which is actually helping people who've experienced domestic abuse build businesses. So one of the things that I found was, off of the back of the experiences that I had when I was a child, that informed a lot of the decisions that I made in my intimate partner relationships in my formative, so my teenage years, my early 20s. And that landed me in a whole hot mess of trouble. Without trauma dumping, this isn't the space for it. A whole hot mess of trouble. I lost my house. I was financially battered. I couldn't deal with being at work. Working for myself felt much less unsafe. Like, I didn't want to report in. I didn't want to be beholden to. I didn't want a glass ceiling on what I could earn. I wanted to take back my self-esteem, my confidence, my finances. I didn't want to have to justify my every action. Also, I found myself in a position where I was managing people in the corporate sector, and actually I didn't want to manage people. I wanted to lead, and the the arena that I found myself in wasn't conducive to great leadership, and I couldn't be a great leader because I still had a lot of healing to do. So I was, doom scrolling my way through each day, praying to God to get to 5 o'clock just so I could get home and sleep, and it was just no way to live. And as soon as I built a business and realized that business actually saved my life, it gave me back the autonomy that I lost. It gave me back the validation that I was seeking in really unhealthy spaces. It allowed me to do good in the world. It allowed me to reclaim my wisdom and reclaim my intellect and reclaim my ability and capacity. And the way in which I learn and the way in which I do things, which is a little bit left of the middle. I don't know if you can tell by this kind of conversation, right? So the Fly Anyway Foundation is a foundation that I've set up. It's not a charity yet, although we are aiming for charity status. It's a community interest company, whereby we help people who've experienced domestic abuse build businesses. If they've got a business idea, we, from a trauma-informed perspective, can provide them with business support and therapeutic support to help them to build their businesses. So this is for people after point of crisis, because I needed to start helping where I could help. I can help in the field of business. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not, a trauma specialist. But what I can do is, from a very informed place, understand what the barriers are to self-employment and indeed to employment. And through the incredible audience and community that I've curated, put the jigsaw together so that we can really help people do that. And that's what we do now. And our plan is, so at the moment we help, they're not called service users, they're not called victims, they're not called survivors. They are business builders. They are people who happen to have experienced domestic abuse build businesses. The next is to help people who have barriers to employment, because business isn't for everybody because of trauma, access employment. The next is to provide therapeutic services through trauma-informed therapy, as opposed to the wider mental health provision at the minute, which is generically medication and the medicalization of trauma, which isn't necessary in all cases. Understanding what therapy and somatics look like, and understanding what real healing looks like in order to overcome those barriers, and then moving on to hopefully pulling together a national network of refuge. So it's a big piece of work. It's going to take us a while. We need a lot of support. A lot of that support needs to be financial. We do things like fundraising. So this year we've got the Fly Anyway 10K. So me and the squad and whoever else wants to get involved is going to be running 10K around a park in Preston to raise money. And also I'm doing a rickshaw run down the east coast of India. I'm turning 40 this year, so we're hoping to raise £40,000 for my 40th birthday. Not for my 40th birthday, but for the Fly Anyway Foundation. So 40 for 40 is what we're going to do this year, just for my personal fundraising efforts, as well as that of 10% of our sponsorship money for Be Inspired. So for people that sponsor the event, or people that buy tickets, people that have expo at the events, 10% of that goes to the Fly Anyway Foundation. All of my book sales, I don't make any money from my books. All of the profits from the books that I've written go to the Fly Anyway Foundation. So everything that I do where I can outside of the safety and security of my family now is ploughed into the foundation.
I love so many aspects of that. And what I really notice as you describe that is, of course, your passion and the sensitivity with which you're, the keen awareness that you have of the challenges that people are facing, because we all humans who have been here for a hot second have some degree of traumatic experience, whatever people talk about, big T trauma, small T trauma, whatever.
Mm-hmm. It's
People
all subjective.
all have experiences.
It's all subjective.
Yeah,
100%.
exactly. And what is interesting to me from a brand and a language perspective and communication perspective is just how far forward you can see, like that you're not, you have at the moment. And I remember when you put out a call in the community for anyone who wanted to potentially support these business builders.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I put my hand up for. And because ADHD, totally forgot to follow up on. So hands up in public, totally forgot and want to get involved. So I'm glad we're having this conversation, if for no other reason that it's reminded me of that. And if you are listening to this and you have something that you could potentially offer into Dani's foundation, it may be something that is worth having a conversation with somebody on the team, or
you can go to flyanyway.org.uk, and there's different ways that you can get involved. So you can get involved from a financial perspective, you can get involved from a support perspective. So there's lots of things that you can do to kind of sort of big sister, big brother, big sibling your way in if you wanted to do something like that. There's lots of ways that you can get involved. But yeah, it's been a real long game that we've been playing, but my whole business has been a long game. In fact, one of the talks I'm working on at the minute is called The Long Game Lion, for lots of different reasons. But for me, people see the work that I do and think that these things happen very quickly, think that I move very quickly. And yes, I move very quickly, but also I've got the next sort of 4 or 5 steps in my mind already. The sat nav is already set, which makes it easier for me to get there. And I think that what a lot of people do early doors in their business is they have this product, they have this service, they want to offer it in the first instance, and they get bogged down in the now of things, which is okay. We talk about presence and we talk about the importance of that, but actually having longer term strategy, 3, 4, 5, 10 years even, strategy and overall plan in place is, for me, really necessary so that I can keep going in the right direction. Now, that's not to say I'm a fan of the phrase structures from which to deviate. That's not to say I'm going to get thrown a curveball and I might have to change direction a little bit, but at least I'm going in a direction from which to deviate from. And for me, it was always, the Fly Anyway Foundation was always, that was the seed that was sown when I was 13. IATQB wasn't, in terms of me being a speaking coach and me being it being a speaking business, wasn't necessarily the thing. I just wanted to help people. So once I got really clear on the what, the how became much easier, and the why was already there.
Yeah. And it's really fascinating to watch how your language, to notice as we're talking about this, the language that you have around showing up and taking up space and supporting people remains consistent throughout, so that you're able to have that same energy and that same dynamism that you're bringing into the work that you're doing through the foundation with these business builders, with the team that you've been able to put together, with the trauma, informed coaching that you bring to them so that they're doing good and not doing harm unintentionally.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful to watch how your seemingly effortless communication abilities mean that the message is consistent at every single stage. I know it's not effortless
Yeah.
because it can look like that on the outside, especially from performers, but
Mm-hmm.
I love it. It's beautiful to watch how all of the different pieces of the jigsaw play with each other and are in this constant um, virtuous motion of lifting people up and bringing people along and come on, we can do this and you can do this and we want to hear from you and your message matters, and be that on a tiny scale or a bigger scale. And you've created a community where there are partnerships that are being formed and people are having opportunities that they wouldn't have had otherwise. And
Yeah.
those are other ways of of helping people, whether it's you facilitating the community so that they can find the help they need, or they can come up with ideas together. And it's
Yeah.
something that you keep doing. So thank you for doing that, for leading with that, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Anne. It's a pleasure to speak to you. And also, it's a pleasure to speak to you, just to be able to hang out with you as well. We need to do this more.
We do need to do this more. And for you listening, if Dani has just gone straight into your heart like she did into mine, I will give you all of the links to Dani's website. And if you have a little secret hankering, or like me, not so secret hankering to get on a stage and flap your gums and have people listen to the things that you say with the support of someone who is very caring and encouraging, then I urge you to run, don't walk, to see if you can get a chance to work with Dani, because really it was pivotal for me and we're just getting started.
Yes, we are. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.